Hablemos de la importancia de un guión para crear una buena película. Al final no puedes tener una buena película si no tienes una buena historia. Y por eso quise entrevistar a un colaborador mío que fue nominado al Oscar por su trabajo en el guión de la película Gorilas en la Niebla. Aparte de que él ha escrito Tarzán, Tierra de Osos, Atlantis, Jorobado de Notre Dame, entre otras. Su nombre es Tav Murphy. Hola, soy Inicie, ser artista de películas animadas y de live action, y este es mi canal donde les comparto todo lo que sé sobre el mundo de la animación, el cine, arte digital, etcétera, etcétera. Así que si no lo has hecho, dale clic en suscribir porque estoy subiendo una cantidad de información súper jugosa y súper útil de este mundo y mucho más. Buenas tardes, estamos aquí otra vez en la sección de entrevistas porque ya saben que yo los consiento muchísimo y hoy tenemos el honor y el gusto de tener a Tav Murphy con nosotros, el escritor de Brother Bear, Atlantis, Tarzán y el Jorobado de Notre Dame, además de Gorilas en la Niebla, que es una película nominada al Oscar. Entonces tenemos aquí a Tav Murphy, vamos a agradecerle y vamos a empezar. So Tav, thank you so much, honestly, for being here with us. We love you, we love your work, you changed so many lives, and we're so happy to have you here and just talk with you.
I'm excited to be here, really, truly. I have sent so many fans posters in Mexico, and I love my Mexican fans of the movies. And, you know, one of these days, my dream is to come to Mexico and meet all you guys. So we're gonna make that happen too.
Yes, we would love it if you could come. So let's just talk about your amazing career. Honestly, I'm baffled by all our favorite movies. Or our favorite movies were written by you. So how did you get started in this? Is it something you studied? It's something that you wanted as a kid?
Well, you know, I get asked this question a lot, and really having, you know, the ability from this higher hill of my older age to look back on my life, I can really see where the DNA of my becoming a writer began, and it began with watching movies as a kid. I loved movies as a kid, and I also concurrently loved writing creative stories in school. Either grade school, middle school, and into high school. I loved a lot of that, whereas my peers couldn't stand it. I mean, like the guys I was going to school with are like, "Oh my God, I got to write a story," and I'm like, "This is so cool." So I really I love that process, but you know, I had no inkling in those days that I was going to end up where I ended up. In fact, when I graduated high school, I thought I wanted to be a forest ranger. So I went to school to study forestry and wildlife. And I had this romantic notion of riding the backcountry and, you know, on a horse and, you know, like saving lives and all this, putting out wildfires. Anyway. So, you know, 6 months into my first year of college, I had a little bit of an existential crisis because I didn't feel like, as much as I love the outdoors, I didn't feel like I was in my lane yet, specifically for what my career would end up being. So I remember going back to my dorm room. I went to WSU, Washington State University, and looking in the mirror and saying, honestly, Tab, what do you really want to do? Like, just free form it. What do you want to do? And the thing that came out of my mouth shocked me, which was, I want to go to Hollywood and make movies. Or be in the movie business in some way. So that was a kind of a like, wow moment for me. And I remember calling my parents and saying, hey, this isn't kind of working out over here for me. And they were like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I think I want to go to Hollywood and get into the movie business. And
what?
It was like dead silence.
Yes.
Like, but I have to give my parents credit, because I think a lot of well-meaning parents talk their kids out of doing something they don't understand out of fear. And my parents, even though they didn't know a fucking thing about Hollywood or anything, you know, they'd only taken us to Disneyland when we were kids. That's it, right? So, but I have to give them credit, because they said, we don't know anything about that. We don't know anybody that would, like, it's like a foreign language to us. Yes. But if that's really what you want to do, we'll support you. If that's what your calling is. So my parents sort of gave me the freedom, you know, not that I needed their permission, but it's always nice to have somebody say, hey, go for it. You know, like, we're behind you. You know, we believe in you. So I transferred down to USC Film School the next year, and I found my tribe, man. I just, you know, suddenly I was surrounded by people that I could talk about movies with 24/7, not just the movies themselves, but how they get made, how they, all these things. And while I was there in my first year, there was a screenwriting elective class, and I thought, well, I like writing stories. I might as well take that. And that, frankly, Erica, is where it all sort of dovetailed and came together. Because once I got in there and started writing and realized that, you know, screenplays and the movies, and I had a professor that took an interest in me as a writer and said, basically, dude, you have some talent here, and if you want to direct movies, the quickest way to get into the director's chair is to be able to write a great screenplay. So I kind of took him at his word, and I dropped out of film school. I think he was like, I didn't mean for you to drop out of school, Tab, but I thought, well, you know, fuck it, because I saw a lot of my peers graduating with degrees and even master's degree, and they had a great reel under their arm, but they were tending bars, man. And USC in those days was very expensive. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to put all my eggs into this basket of, like, I'm going to begin writing screenplays and see if I can break in that way. And so that was my path, you know. But along the way, I delivered Frito-Lay potato chips all over Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I worked in a 7-Eleven for years, and you know, so you know, you just did whatever it took, right?
You do what you gotta do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's go.
So that's kind of the story of how I ended up, you know, on the path that would lead me to a career. Yeah.
That's amazing, and I love it that it's, you know, people have this image that suddenly you find the correct path, and then you start working on it, and it's all fantastic because you're so talented and you get working on it, you know. But they don't know that in order to fulfill a dream, as is not impossible, that's not the word, different. You gotta work in 7-Eleven, you gotta make it work to make ends meet. So I love it that that yours is so real, you know.
I would say the other thing to that is you also have to be a realist. You have to be very, you know, self-aware of your level of talent, your whatever it is. I mean, I got a lot of cues from a lot of people I respected that pointed me in the direction that I was, you know, and I believed that I could write and tell stories. And all the way back to, I remember in middle school getting cues from English teachers saying, you know, like, you have to go in, write a story, creative story. It has to be 5 pages long, any story you want, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, friends of mine would be like, okay, I'm going to write a story of how I changed my tire because I had a flat tire on Friday. That's great, you know, but I would write stories that they would like go like, holy shit, what, you know, like I you know, I just wrote different things, you know, things that excited me. And so I was getting a lot of cues along the way, even though I wasn't even aware that would ultimately be my career. So when I decided to go there, I thought, I can do this. I mean, I've got a lot to learn. I've got a lot to, you know, practice. I've got to write scripts until they're coming out my ears. But I think I can really do this. And so, I mean, I would just not want to give false hope to a lot of people that think, oh, I just have to get a job at 7-Eleven. I have to work hard. You know? Like, there is a level of talent you also have to have, whether it's untapped and it's deep inside you that has to come out, or you have to learn the craft, which is a thing about screenwriting that you can actually do, because screenwriting is a craft to a certain degree. But you also just all the time have to be a realist about where you are and what your level is and how you can get better if that's truly what you want to achieve. That's
a great answer, because, you know, there's a confusion in online and in creative careers, how much is talent, how much is skill, and how much it's something you can develop. So it's great to know that there's such thing as talent, and there's also such thing as a skill. You know, you can develop both.
Sure. No, absolutely. And the other thing is, you know, that like a lot of people think, well, it's luck. Well, I believe luck may play a part, but you create your own luck. Honestly, I mean, you just do, and so you can call it luck if you want, but usually behind luck is opportunities that you've stepped into, risks you've taken, hard work you've done, and then all of a sudden you sell a script or you get hired and people go, oh man, he's so lucky.
Yeah. 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 There's a golfer called Lee Trevino who made a hole in one in a Masters tournament, and then the crew, everyone just went, wow, you're so lucky. And he said, lucky? I practiced 10 hours a day to make that putt. I mean, to that shot. It's not luck. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
It's a combination of opportunity and hard work and all of these other things that creates whatever you want to call it, luck in any situation, especially a career like in Hollywood. So, but basically, there are very, very few people that are successful in Hollywood, whether they're actors, directors, or writers, that have not fucking, paid their dues, like really, like starting out, and like, everybody's got their own story of how they started and what they did to get where they were going. So, and I think the main thread through all of those stories is that even if they were the only ones that believed it, they believed in themselves and their ability to get where they wanted to go. And it was just a question of time. So patience, perseverance, productivity, the 3 Ps.
So let's talk about how you got started professionally. So how, because I remember that you were kind enough to share, he has an amazing Facebook group, everybody, that he shares with us all his life. And we are so thankful for it. It's amazing to be part of the fandom. Honestly, we're Atlanteans and we love it. And you shared a few months ago a video where you talked about Gorillas in the Mist. And it was very interesting to see how you got started with the script, how the opportunity came to you, and I thought it was so inspiring. So would you mind talking a little bit about Gorillas in the Mist?
Well, no, I don't mind talking about Gorillas in the Mist at all. But, the very, very start of what I was trying to do as a screenwriter, I was working at a 7-Eleven in North Hollywood, and I was writing scripts, on the side, and I had weird hours. Sometimes I'd do night shifts, and this is a thing I talk a lot about in my classes, especially to younger writers, emerging writers, who are complaining, oh, I don't have time to write because I have a job, or I have to take care of my kids, or I have to do this, I have to do that. And I just would go, you know what? You will find the time. If you're really serious about it, you will find the time. I don't care if that's a half hour a day where you go into a little closet and you sit and you only get a half hour to write what you want to write. Boom, you will find the time. And if you can only write 1 page a day, in 120 days, you'll have a script. So I think a lot of people, it's just, you have to find that time to make it work. And so I had written some scripts. I also had met people coming into that store, one of whom was a guy who wanted to be a screenwriter, and he hung out with a bunch of guys that wanted to be screenwriters, and he invited me into the group. And so every week we'd meet for burgers and beer and talk about movies and talk about our scripts and exchange pages. And so that's another thing that's very important, is to surround yourself with people, if you can, that want the same thing.
My time has come.
That, that you're in an energy-filled space where everybody is, like creating, being productive, and, there's a support network in place amongst friends. And so to that end, I had written a script called Last of the Dogmen.
Amazingly.
And I, in those days, it was only a first draft, but I showed it to one of the buddies in that group, and he goes, this is great. He said, I have a buddy who's an executive at Paramount. You mind if I show him the script? And I'm like, no. So this is what I mean. So an opportunity arose to where the first thing that I had ever written was read by an executive at Paramount. And prior to that, I'd been sneaking onto studio lots, and I'd done stupid stuff like put my scripts in manila envelopes and pretend I was a messenger, and I would just go into producers' offices and script on the top of the pile. You know, so I just wanted to get read by somebody. So that was they read that script at Paramount and they had me down for a meeting. Like, I didn't have an agent, I didn't have anything. I'm like changing out of my 7-Eleven smock as I'm driving down onto the Paramount lot. Like, this is nuts, man. So that was really the first time I got on the radar of anybody. And so, and that led to my first job at Paramount a year later, writing a script for Eddie Murphy. And then I wrote another one. And then, these didn't get made, but they were jobs. They were jobs. And it's just like anything else. You start in the mailroom. So the mailroom in those days of screenwriting was just getting hired to write something for very little money and just trying to, get noticed by people that, could make, could give you a hand up to the next level, right? So Gorillas in the Mist came along. I had been out of work for I don't know. This is another fact of Hollywood life. It's fits and spurts. It's a roller coaster ride of peaks and valleys. Always, very few people, the 0.5%, the Spielbergs, etc., continue to work at a high level. But in terms of screenwriters, it's always up and down, up and down. And so I had gotten a few jobs at Paramount. And then, there was a year and a half where I didn't work. So I'm back on unemployment, And then I get a call from a guy who'd read Last of the Dogmen and liked my work. And he worked for a couple of producers at Warner Brothers. And they had this story about a woman who studied in gorillas in Rwanda, right?
Yeah.
And that was, because of what I was interested in terms of before I became a writer, I was interested in the natural world. I was interested in wildlife and wild places and so that was right in my wheelhouse. And so I went in, had a meeting. They said, look, here's the story. We have a Life magazine article. We have the rights to this photographer that was on the mountain with her. That's all we have. And we need a script as soon as you can get it to us. So I was like, okay. So I wrote my first draft in 2.5 weeks. And but that was also a culmination of so many things. I was like a racehorse at the gate, just waiting for the gate to open. I'm going to run through it and just, and that's what I did on Gorillas. I was just so ready and so motivated, and it just consumed me. And so I wrote the script, and that was the beginning. I mean, the producers loved it. They turned it into the studio. The studio loved it and said, we're making this movie, blah, blah, blah. And that was and then ultimately, I got an Academy Award nomination.
Yep.
Oh my God! Wow.
So that just vaulted me into a whole different stratosphere of, meetings with people and, producers, etc. So that was a very exciting time.
Well, it's a big break.
A big what?
A big break, Many people,
people
start
you know what? In any career that has longevity associated with it, especially in the arts, it's about multiple big breaks.
That's true. That's true. That's
career.
True. Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes, definitely.
And the next big break for me was ultimately agreeing to do something for Disney, right?
That's a question.
I had a few big breaks along the way.
So, animation. That's the big theme in the TikTok channel and futurely on YouTube. So it's animation, and you have no idea how many people. When I said we're interviewing Taff Murphy, writer of this amazing movie, they all said Atlantis is my all-time favorite movie. Brother Bear, it made me cry. To be honest, I know the scene with where the light touches there's no freaking time where I don't watch that. Where the mom comes back and I tear the hell up. It's and the music, it's just another level of writing.
Honestly, I was very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. and I got to do 4 of those movies in a row. And I feel very fortunate that I got to do those movies. I love those movies. I love that people like yourself, and fans of those movies that grew up on those movies as kids are now coming of age and view those movies as not only nostalgia, but I think they look at those movies and say, and they can point to significant moments in all of those movies that caused them to, become who they were in some ways, to identify with characters, especially the strong women I was lucky enough to write in a lot of those movies.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many fans have come up to me, and especially women saying, "Oh my God, Esmeralda." I mean, I saw her at a time when I just felt a little lost, and I just, her strength and her, social consciousness and her, justice screaming out. That lit a fire in me, and I'm not, whatever. They've now gone on to become, whatever.
Hey, Queen.
I feel very lucky that not only did I got to work on those movies, but that they still to this day resonate with people.
Oh, you have no idea. It's
a true gift,
Yes, actually, Gary Trousdale, I always say Trousdale, told me something that made absolute sense to me. We can talk about that a little bit more, but after he did Beauty and the Beast, he did Hunchback of Notre Dame, another one of your movies, and then Atlantis. And he told me that even though box office and for the studio, it wasn't a big hit, specifically Atlantis.
No.
They noticed that it didn't resonate with the parents at the time, but for us, that we went to see the movie with our parents, it changed our lives. So now that we are grown, we obviously said, thank you. So we obviously said, we want this movie's made our childhoods, not our parents' lives, our childhoods.
She's got a point.
Yeah.
You're right. And I think, I think Tarzan was the only movie that I wrote that actually was a big hit. The other 3, Brother Bear, Atlantis, and Hunchback, were, I would say, moderately successful, because Disney at that time, their animated movies were just skyrocketing at the box office.
Yeah.
But I was also working on movies during a time at Disney when there was a real renaissance in terms of, trying to tell different stories, new stories. I mean, look, we got away with murder on Hunchback. I don't think that movie would get made at Disney today. So that was symbolic of the studio wanting to really stretch and get away from a template that they had sort of fallen into, which was the musical fairy tale. So, I mean, I just feel like I hit it at the right time, came into the fold, and I brought a live action kind of sensibility to, to Hunchback, to Tarzan, to all those things. And so it worked out pretty well. But it's, the other thing is a lot of young people, they may not have gone to the theaters to see those movies, but boy, did they discover them on home video. I can't tell you how many fans, they, send pictures of VHSs that are just ragged of Atlantis. They've watched 30, 40 times growing up, as a kid. And that stuff, I wasn't even aware of that stuff, Erica, honestly, until COVID, because my career has been so long. I've been doing it now for almost 40 years, right? And I love those films, but like anything else, you kind of park them in the back of your subconscious and you move on to other things. I wasn't aware that there were huge fans. I wasn't aware that there were fan bases for these movies. I wasn't aware of any of that stuff. The first inkling I got was a few years back. I was invited to Hawaii. A friend of mine has a studio over there to work on a film he was working on. Come on over, for a week, it'll be fun, and maybe you can help me out. I said, sure, let's do it. I get over there, Kona, on the Big Island, and they have a film school nearby that his studio sort of supports, and they allow their students to come and watch movies. They have screening room. So I'm over there, and he goes, hey, those guys at the school got wind that you were here, and they wondered if you would be willing to do a Q&A. They want to show Gorillas in the Mist. I said, okay, cool. I haven't seen that movie in 20 years. So come in, and there's like 30 students, and they're all sort of like your age or a little younger. They're all in film school, all, you know, and they watch Gorillas in the Mist. And now you have to understand, this is a movie made before most of them were born. Yeah. Or, you know, or just little. So they're very respectful. They liked it, you know, like then, and then I do a Q&A with the moderator on stage afterwards. And, you know, the questions are polite and all this, and it's kind of winding down. And I thought, okay, that was cool, you know. And then the moderator goes, oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys realize that Tab also wrote Hunchback of Notre Dame, Tarzan, Brother. Oh my God, you should have seen them. It was like they had cattle prods on their seats. I mean, I was like, holy shit. Yeah. It was like they came alive. And after that, they were lined up 20 deep to get a picture with me. So girls coming up crying. Wait till my mom saw. I tell my mom I met you. I mean, it was insane.
I identify.
It was insane.
Yeah.
So that was the first inkling. And then when the pandemic hit and everybody was on lockdown, that's when Tammy Tuckey reached out to me and said, hey, would you mind doing a video interview about Atlantis? And nobody had ever asked me about Atlantis. I mean, I love that film, but I thought I had written the only animated Bond for years. Like, it did not perform well. And so I'm like, okay, I mean, I'd love to talk about it. Nobody's ever asked me about it. So we do this little interview. And at the end, she goes, Tab, I don't think you realize how many fans of this movie are out there. I mean, and she steered me to that Atlantis fan page on Facebook. So I went on there and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I literally, like, here are people talking about characters I dreamed up, talking about them and you know, like, what, you know, like having discourse and this and that. And I was like, holy shit. I had no idea. No idea.
I honestly, I was obsessed, at least personally me, I was obsessed with Greek mythology. Obsessed. And all the movies I could, Greek mythology, with Plato.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I studied, I'm a minor in classics. And I couldn't find, since I was a little kid, a movie that shared that area of Plato and Greek mythology that talked about Atlantis. I couldn't find anything but Stargate Atlantis. You know, it was not cool. And then I saw Atlantis, and it was like, for me, it was like cocaine. Honestly, you have no idea. And my mom couldn't understand why, because, you know, she bought me Little Mermaid stuff or Beauty and the Beast stuff. And when I saw Kira, this strong, beautiful built woman, I said, that's me. And we, as kids, we didn't have that role model of a strong woman that is not looking to get married.
Emotional, damn it.
You know,
No, exactly. I mean, and that was a conscious decision that we all made going in. We really wanted to sort of break the mold, especially with Kita. And I think we were very successful. And to this day, I mean, like yourself, I get a lot of young women coming or just, you know, messaging me saying, Princess Kita is the reason I am who I am today. You know, because I saw her at a very, like impressionable age. And I just never forgot the fact that here is somebody who could be strong and forceful and kick ass on the one hand, and on the other hand, be goofy and, like silly and have fun. And I realized that, you could be all of those things, So anyway, it's always I never get tired of hearing from fans. I'm always grateful, but I love to hear people's connections to the movies. It's really cool.
I cannot tell you how many people that I know they're not even in the animation industry, just fans. Whenever they see that Atlantis poster is up here, they want to buy it. And I'm like, that's my most prized possession. Not even this. That is my most prized possession. You made our childhoods, honestly. We're thankful, forever thankful.
Well, I appreciate that. And it is the same as when I was a kid. I had movies that affected me. And I would have given my eye teeth to be able to just say hi to somebody that had something to do with that, later. And but I think what happens is when somebody sees a poster like that, and I know firsthand, it is a direct link to their childhood. It is a direct connection, no matter what kind of childhood they had, whether it was bad, good, indifferent, this, that, all the struggle, this. When they had that 90 minutes in front of the screen, it transported them somewhere where they connected emotionally to the characters, to the material, to the story. And that's all you can hope to do as an artist, especially as a writer, is to create that kind of a story that people, still to this day connect to. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful and thankful.
How do you got started? Like in Disney, you already talked that they called you because they really like your body of work and all that. But working in Disney and all that, how was it like? Were you really just commissioned to do scripts, or did it was just an idea they had and then how was it like?
Well, it was it almost didn't happen.
What the fuck?
It almost didn't happen.
What?
And I'll tell you the story of why it almost didn't happen. And that is, and it begins with one of my first jobs at Paramount. The executives that were in charge in those days at Paramount, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Michael Eisner, those guys, after I did those jobs and then moving on to the things like Gorillas in the Mist, those guys went over to Disney and took over at Disney. Michael Eisner was the head of Walt Disney Company, and Jeffrey Katzenberg took over the animation division. So, and this would have been in the early 90s. Many things happened. I was, I had written that script, Last of the Dogmen. I'd found a producer, and I was trying to get that movie made as a director. So I was really focused on that. I was focused on live action movies, stories like Gorillas in the Mist. So when Jeffrey, through some of his people at Disney, reached out to me and said, "Hey, come in and have a meeting, at Disney. Come think about writing an animated feature." My initial reaction was, I don't want to write cartoons, man. I want to write, those are for kids.
We don't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to write, like hard hitting, like great stories and emotional this, that, and the other. And so in all fairness, the real true renaissance of Disney animation had only just begun. Little Mermaid had been released, which I still saw as a kid's movie. Beauty and the Beast was coming out, but it hadn't come out yet. And so I just said, thanks, but no thanks, initially. I know, right?
Yeah.
I know. And then over the course of several years, they kept trying, or they kept asking, why don't you just come in and look at stuff? And I said, I'm really, focused on this movie I want to direct, and I appreciate the interest, but so I kept saying no. And not many people know this, but I have the dubious distinction of having turned down Toy Story. I know, right?
What?
Yeah. But let me explain that. The way it was put to me, I agreed to have lunch with a Disney exec, and he was like, "Hey, we just bought this company up in Marin County, and we're going to make our first CG, computer-generated animated feature. And if you're interested, you would have to move up to Marin County for no less than 2 years." And I said, "Well, what's the story?" And the guy said, "It's a story about a boy and his talking toys." And I knew he was like, it's kid stuff. And plus, I'm here trying to get a movie made. I can't leave Hollywood for 2 years to work on a movie about a kid and his talking fucking toys.
Yeah, that's not what Toy Story is about. That's the worst.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Yeah,
but that's in the pitch, for the 10-second pitch, that's what it was.
That's the worst salesman ever.
Yeah. That was an easy pass for me at the time. Yeah. Right. So when I passed on Hercules, I passed on a bunch of them because I just wasn't. So a couple of things happened. I was living in Jackson Hole here at the time, and The Beauty and the Beast came out in 1991. And I thought, I haven't seen an animated movie in quite a few years, really. Well, maybe I should just go see one. I mean, Disney keeps coming and asking, maybe I should just go see what they're up to. So I went to see Beauty and the Beast, and, that was a jaw dropper for me because it was not only an animated movie, it was a cinematic experience. I was like, holy shit, the action scenes were, and the way the camera moved, it was a whole new way of looking at animated movies for me. And so that was one thing. The next thing that happened was that I got my movie financed that I was going to direct, Last the Dogman. I'm going to get to make this movie. That's the good news. The bad news is, Tom Berenger, who was going to star in it, had 2 other movies to do before he did mine. So I was in the queue, I was in line, but I had like 8 months to kill before I could go into pre-production on my movie with him. And right at that time, Disney called again. Why don't you just come in and take a look at what we're doing? So I finally said, okay, because part of my brain was like, I got 8 months. I have to pay bills. I need a job, so like that sort of thing. And the blue collar reality of working as a screenwriter in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I went in and had a meeting with them. And they showed me a lot of stuff in development that would become future animated films. And nothing, Erica, to be honest, like if I'm going to invest a lot of time and energy into something, there has to be some sort of connection for me to the material. It doesn't have to be personal, but I just have to like go, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, okay, I can see myself doing that. And for the material they were showing me and the ideas, I just wasn't feeling it. So I was getting a little depressed. And at the end of that meeting, they said, I'll never forget, they said, and we're also trying to figure out if there's an animated movie in this. And this turned out to be The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Big true.
So what they didn't know is that I grew up a total monster nerd of the 60s. I loved scary movies, horror movies, like all the Universal monsters, the canon of like Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Hunchback, who was lumped into that canon.
Yeah.
Even though he was a human, it was still considered part of the Universal monster. So I knew the Hunchback. I knew that story. I knew the story of Quasimodo and Esmeralda. I'd seen Lon Chaney Sr.'s 1925 silent film. I'd seen Charles Laughton's film of it. When they said that, I just immediately said, I'm in. Like there was no hesitation on my part. Yeah. I want to do that. So it was a great synchronicity of my childhood and what they were offering me. And my only hesitation was, even as a kid, I knew that, and of course, as I grew up as an adult, I knew the material was a little bit more than a kid's movie.
Oh my.
Yeah.
It was a little darker. There were some very adult themes that ran through that book. And so as much as I was excited about it, I suddenly became very nervous about it because my only, sort of like idea of Disney was that they make really happy kind of musical and all these, and I just couldn't see turning Hunchback into that. Namely because, like if I ever wanted to go to Paris, I didn't want to be met at the border and strung up for like ruining the greatest, piece
drama
of literature.
ever, yeah.
Right. So I was like, oh my God. But the coolest thing in that moment, and we talked about this earlier, Disney was really looking to do something different.
Yes.
They were really looking to stretch. And so they gave me license they just said to me, write it the way you would write it. Don't write it as a kid's movie. Don't write it as a Disney movie. We'll worry about our brand. We'll worry about if you push it too far. Just go for it. And so I suddenly was like, holy shit, this is amazing. What a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I, we were talking about this. I was on a Zoom with Kirk yesterday, and we were talking about Hunchback a little bit.
Kirk Wise?
Yeah,
Kirk Wise? Oh, I love his work. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about it. We're working together on another project, and we had a Zoom with some executives, and they were like you, fangirling over.
Yay! Yes.
Okay, right. So we're talking about it, and I, and they asked me my, strongest memory of the development of that movie, and I said my strongest memory is writing scenes that I thought would never make it in the movie in a million fucking years. Like never.
What the fuck is that?
That was my strongest. I'm like, this is never gonna make it in the movie, and some of those didn't, but a lot of them did, and I will always look at Hunchback as a movie made in a time and a place that probably could not be replicated today. I don't think Disney would make that movie today. And it was a movie that I had, like to this day, it still resonates with me that we got away with murder on that film. I mean, the things that we were able to put in that movie in those days, I mean, that's crazy. So I'm very proud. I remain very proud of that.
Honestly, I've talked to before I got into this industry, with the conversations I would have with my friends, one time I remember that we talked, which Disney villain is like the worst villain, not even in design, just as the worst villain. And I said, like, I don't remember, I think I said Scar or something, because Lion King scarred me for life. Sure. And then my best friend said, no, it's Frollo. I'm like, why? Because he's the only one that thinks it's doing the right thing.
Well, not only that, but he's a very real.
Yes. So when she said that,
and he's got that voice, and he has that ability to manipulate Quasimodo and all that stuff. I mean, I became aware there's a huge fan base for that villain.
Yes.
Girls first after Frollo, and I'm like, what? Are you out of your minds?
Yes.
Okay, whatever. But no, Frollo is he was a great villain. I loved writing him. And by the way, I had a lot of help, not just me, but the artists would draw storyboards with him, and there were other story people that added things. So it's not my point is he's not just my creation. I share that creation with a lot of very talented artists and other writers, but I always loved Frollo, and Tony Jay's voice acting of Frollo.
Oh, wow.
Spot on. I mean, just so to this day, I think that's an amazing piece of art that I was very lucky to be associated with.
I truly believe that it's one of the magnus opus pieces of Disney animation, not just in the movie industry, as a piece of art. The backwards. I think it's the only soundtrack besides Lion King, because I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan, that the music is as grand as the visuals and as the story.
I'll tell you a couple quick stories about Hunchback, and this is me as a screenwriter, working at Disney Animation. I'd never written anything in animation before. I was just like a virgin. Everything is new. And one of the things that I loved was that I was completely invited to be involved in a lot of story meetings with artists and this and that, which was inspiring to me. It inspired the writing. And I worked on that movie with Kirk and Gary and Don Hahn probably for a solid year. I was the only writer on it, and I had written a screenplay. And one day I got a call saying, "Hey, we're gonna have a meeting with Schwartz and Menken."
Alan Menken made my child. Yes.
Yeah, they're gonna spot songs in your script, and we'd love you to be there. And I thought, oh, this is cool. Awesome. So I go into the meeting, and it's in this big room, and I come in and I see on the far wall my entire script, page by page, has been tacked up all along this big wall. And there's a piano in there, and Alan Menken, Steve Schwartz are there, and it's just a handful of us. And so they get going, and I think it was Alan. I don't know if it was Alan that had the pointer or Steve. I think it was Alan, and Steve had a black magic marker. So they read the script. They went from the beginning, fade in, blah 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 blah, and then they would stop and say, "Song," and then they would, Alan Menken would hit like 6 pages of my script, and Schwartz would go up and cross them all out. And I was like, holy fuck.
Nice job, team.
Like, that was my best, dialogue. That was my best scene. And so over the course of this, over like 20 minutes, they're getting through the script. I think Alan looked over his shoulder and he saw me, and I think I was sinking farther down and being like with this look on my face, like, oh my God, and he was so funny. He's like, Tab, no, it's okay. We love your script. Your words inspire the songs, and we'll even use some of your dialogue, blah, blah, blah. So it was very sweet of him to do that, but it was like a huge, like, kind of, wow, this is how it's done, So that was a quick lesson for me in spotting songs in an animated feature. And then, like Hellfire, for instance.
Oh my, best villain song in the history of animation.
Well, of course. But my point is that song didn't exist in the script. It was simply a monologue I had written, Frollo pacing in his, in his room, pacing and like venting his frustration about Esmeralda and all the subtext of him being horny for her and all that stuff. Well, they took that and they said that's a song immediately, and I thought, okay, cool, and so months later, Kurt, Gary, Don, and I are sitting in some meeting, and a FedEx package comes, and it's a song on a cassette tape. That's how long ago this was. A song on a cassette tape, and it's Hellfire, and it's Alan and Steven. So Alan on piano, Steven singing. And so we were like really excited because we'd been like, okay, what's Hellfire going to look like? They had already named the song, the sequence. And so we retreated into somebody's office, I can't remember, and we had a little cassette player. They put the tape in, and boom, they started playing. And, like piano, and then, Steve singing this song. And as we listened, everybody's jaw just started to drop open, like, holy shit.
It's an amazing song. An amazing.
And then I'll never forget at the end, Kurt hit the stop button on the cassette recorder, and he leaned back and said, well, that's never going to make it in the movie. It did, right? So that again is an example of where Disney and like the kind of support the filmmakers and myself as a writer got in terms of like translating that book into an animated feature without it be pandering simply to kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
that song, honestly, I think it's the best villain song ever. But not only that, like the theme in your script, in the movies you've worked on, the villains are real villains. It's not like an interpretation. Like it's something that Disney today is doing, like it might be a villain, but maybe not. It's more metaphysical. It's more a personal villain. It's something inner,
Boring.
And your villains are actually bad people. They all have a real badness. Clayton it's trafficking gorillas. I forget the break there. I forget the name of the villain in Atlantis. Hold on. What's the name of it? Rourke, yes. He is an actual bad guy that it's about to kill civilization for money. It's real bad guy things, someone you can actually meet.
Yeah, well, I always say the best villains are the ones whose plan you might go, oh, kind of get that. I get that. But it's being perpetrated by a psychopath. Who has no care for human life or anything else, and that's what makes him a villain.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
The plan itself is like, okay, there's a power source down there they want. Maybe they'll, maybe they'll bargain for it, or maybe they'll be share it. No, they're just going to kill everybody and take it. That's So, but the Rourke's transformation in that movie was really a lot of fun to write.
Yeah. It is so funny. Your scripts are really funny. They have like that. It's Saturday Night Live kind of like jokes that I still remember. Like in Atlantis, the time that Milo is throwing up overboard, Why is it always carrots? I agree. It's those kind of things that you are like, yeah, it's
exactly.
That line stuck to me like forever. Like every single time that I'm sick and I throw up, I'm like, she's rocking. Why it's always carrots?
What was the reason?
Yeah, those kind of like funny lines, it make the movie so enjoyable for me as a kid that I didn't understand the 5 food groups, and now I do. Bourbon, whiskey. It's bourbon, whiskey, beans and lard.
It's whiskey, lard, bacon, something else.
I don't remember right now, but when I was a kid, I was like beans,
bacon, whiskey, and lard. Beans, bacon, whiskey, and lard. There we go.
I remember that when I watched it as a kid, it's like, oh, that's funny. Now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, whiskey. It has like the enjoyable moments for kids and adults. So as an adult myself now, that I watch the movie again because I love it. I'm like, yeah, and in Hunchback it happens all the time. Like there's this scene where Esmeralda is hiding in the cathedral, and he gets her by her neck, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe as a kid I missed that. It's the adult thing.
Frollo?
Yes, in Hunchback.
He comes up behind her, he sniffs her hair.
Yeah, no, as a kid I'm like, oh, he's so mean. As an adult I'm like, oh. No, that's something more there.
Well, and as you get older and watch that movie, it becomes even more perverted in some way. His
it's
character.
amazing. Yes.
So as a kid, you just go whatever, but as an adult, you go, oh my god.
Yes, yeah. I honestly, it made it real. It really
real creepy. That's what it made it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's part of the character that he is trying to sanctify in everyone when himself he's just full of sin. It makes him real, and that's a question that we're gonna move on in a little bit for the Q&A. But I personally have. Like when you're writing evil characters, like what? Not evil, because I think they're misunderstood. Many of them are misunderstood. But in your creative process of writing like villains, how do you come up with these character traits, like creativity, like in your creative process when you're making them evil? How do you come up with that? Like it's an observation thing. It's a reading the script thing. Or it's just people that just fit the category and you just write them down?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things. For me, probably personally, a combination of having watched hundreds and hundreds of movies over the decades. And, some of the best villains are just, so cool as cucumbers. And then there's psychopaths that are like, like type A out there, crazy. Yeah. We knew we wanted to lead the audience down a path of believing that he was on this mission for altruistic purposes.
Yeah.
And he was kind of a tough guy, but that's okay. You need a tough guy on a mission like that. It's very dangerous, and then we wanted sort of him to be somewhat endearing, and then when the turn comes, to be weirdly even more endearing to the audience. Like, whoa, like suddenly they go, this guy, now this guy's pulling the mask off of who he really is, and now the stakes and the jeopardy have just increased tenfold in this in the movie, and that's hopefully how you build a character. Some characters are just evil from the get-go, bad from the get-go, like Frollo. But even Frollo, you got to watch him manipulate by seemingly being kind and understanding to Quasimodo. And especially when Quasimodo goes out from the cathedral and he gets, hit with the food and pelted and shamed and humiliated, and he comes back in, and Frollo takes advantage of that moment of weakness or humiliation to reaffirm why you should never leave the bell tower.
Yeah. It's incredible. I honestly think your villains. I mean, Gary told me a really amazing metaphor, analogy for this, that Disney was doing, like going straight to Fantasyland. Like if you were in Disneyland, all the movies they were making were straight to the castle, Fantasyland, and you guys took the turn to Adventureland for the first time. And I thought it was, that's it. So it was unexpected for the parents to suddenly not have Disney, the princess movies, and there were adventure movies, and they were not prepared for that. But I think, and there were no songs.
There wasn't the usual template that parents expected, and even to a certain degree, kids expected, until they, later found it on home video and watched it and were like, "Oh, well, this is great." So you're absolutely right.
Well, he is right.
But anytime you try something different, you're taking a gamble. Anytime you try something different, it's a gamble. And I can tell you that everybody that worked on that movie was so proud of doing something different, and nobody was more disappointed at the reception of the movie at the box office than we all were. We thought, we wanted it to be a big hit, not because, make a lot of movie for the studios. No, we just wanted people to see all the hard work, 4 years to make that movie, all the hard work that went into it, But I will say, over the last 20 years, it's found its audience in a big way. In fact, in some ways, it's more popular today than it was when it first came out.
I guarantee you, but everyone admires something different from those movies. That's what I love about it. Like part of me, yes, of course, Kid is a fantastic character, but as an artist, the artwork, the backgrounds, the animation sequence, the steampunk, the style, it's really impressive. I mean, of course, it's Disney, but it's something that I hadn't seen before. The ruins, the entire style, the story that they're trying to, the technology, the culture, everything is just so well done. That's something that I, as a kid, always admired. But even the dialogue is amazing. Like the way that the story is told, that at the end she doesn't get the prince, she becomes a queen.
Wow!
Yes, exactly.
That's just a theme that I think that many people in my generation just wanted a role model that it was not, that at the end, what someone once told me that Atlantis is the Doors of films, and I asked, what? I don't get it. They've been making the Beatles happy, we all need love, this is fantastic, and then Jimmy Morrison came and said, love is all not you need. Some people are having a rough time, and then the Doors became the Doors. So that's, she told me Atlantis is what, in the world of the Beatles is the Doors. Nobody expected it, and it's just breaking patterns. So it was a good analogy for me at the time, because again, everyone is seeking something different in your movies. In Brother Bear, it called to me in a whole new different level, as a personal level, in Tarzan, the music. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a huge fandom out there saying, it was just an animated movie. Phil Collins really just went off board with this. I know. So that's a personal question I have. You talked a lot about being involved, and they were so cool to let you be involved in the songwriting. But how involved can you get in at least in Tarzan? How involved were you with Phil Collins?
How?
Well, we slept together. Is that involved enough for you? No.
We're very close.
No. Phil lived in I don't know where, Switzerland or someplace, and he did all his writing from Switzerland. It was all sort of them funneled in. I didn't work personally closely with Phil, but I did go to an awards banquet in Los Angeles, where it's one of those kind of awards where you already are told, you've won. You should show up. So he and I went for Tarzan. I think I can't remember. I think it was the Tarzan team maybe, or whatever. But we all received this award. And I sat at a table with him.
Wow.
And so, we proceeded to have drinks and have a really good time and a really great chat. And, he was a fan of mine and I was a huge fan of his. And we just kept laughing and stuff. And then suddenly we realized, oh my God, we got to go up on stage. And He's like, Tab, you talk. I'm like, no, nobody wants to hear the writer. You need to talk. So it was kind of funny. We went up there. I'm glad nobody filmed it because I think we were a little tipsy.
I would have paid good money to see that.
We had a good time. And then, I don't know, a couple of years later, after Brother Bear, a buddy of mine, I was staying at his house in LA because I was living in Canada at the time, but I had to go to LA occasionally for meetings, and I would stay at his house. And he came in the morning and he goes, I just heard your name. I just heard Phil Collins mention your name on the radio. I said, what? I said, yeah, he was on NPR giving an interview, and he was just waxing poetic about your script for Brother Bear.
Wow. I mean, just a side note, I'm on a fangirl, right? I'm a huge Genesis fan. Like, insanely. Yeah, I mean, and then there were four.
Turn it on again.
Yes, when my mom is a huge progressive rock fan, so she showed me the album, the first one that I heard. It was Trick of a Tale, and then she showed me, and then there were four when Peter Gabriel left, and Peter Gabriel is the master, but they did a pretty good job after he left. And honestly, when I heard like Phil Collins, aside from Tarzan, because I first heard him with Tarzan, I said, holy, he's a genius, man. Like, yeah, like, honestly, I'm a huge Phil Collins fan. So I'm so jealous of you right now that you got to get drunk with him.
Come on, man.
Yeah, it was a great moment, and it's just fun, and he really brought his A game to both of those movies.
Yes,
and,
he did.
And I play those songs all the time. I love him on those movies.
Yeah, he did. He set the bar. I mean, in my opinion, like Lion King is not commercial. The music is very orchestra. Like I don't see myself like listening to, except Circle of Life, because Elton John did a great job. I don't listen to the music like, hey, yeah, I'm in the car just playing. It's not my cup of tea. Tarzan and Brother Bear are the songs you can just listen to them whenever, whatever.
Yep.
You don't have to know the plot or the story to be like, that's a great song. So yeah, he did a fantastic job. I mean,
even here in Jackson Hole, right? I go get my coffee every morning at this place called Cowboy Coffee, and there's these nice girls that probably your age or a little younger that work there, and I overheard one of them saying, I love that song from Brother Bear, On My Way. When I moved here, I just blared it on the radio all the drive to get here. So I'd overheard this. The next morning, I signed a Brother Bear poster for her. I brought it in, gave it to her. She's like, "What? You wrote Brother Bear?" I said, "Well, I was one of the writers on Brother Bear." Yes,
Yeah.
It was great. It was awesome.
I feel it, and the orchestra as well. The Brother, like the music when Kenai is being transformed. I had it on my computer I get inspired to draw with that piece of music.
Nice.
That was easy.
Qué historia tan inspiradora, ¿no? Creo que a todos nos queda súper padre la idea de que tenemos que trabajar por nuestros sueños. No todo está servido en charola de plata. Realmente tenemos que tocar la puerta y estar abiertos a cualquier oportunidad. Estar abiertos a colaborar, estar abiertos a realmente acercarnos a todas las personas que podamos para poder iniciar este camino y estos caminos tan complicados y soñados que son. Así que espero que realmente les haya servido esta entrevista con Tab. Personalmente a mí me gustó mucho porque, repito, enseñó que realmente tienes que poder tocar la puerta y moverte y querer hacer algo realmente diferente para obtener resultados diferentes. Entonces realmente espero que les haya gustado y como acabo todos mis videos, no se rindan.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.